Thank you. The Section 2 guys. You're probably wishing they weren't taunting us. That's right. Well, thank you very much for having Wayne and I here. Wayne is going to help me with some PowerPoints that we have, but I got home last night I was in Toronto yesterday. We were able to be at the World Health Organization conference that we were having when Canada was hosting in Toronto. So I got to sit with the Director General of Dr. Chan from the World Health Organization and our Federal Health Minister yesterday at the roundtable discussing these issues that we'll be discussing today. And I guess my comments around the table was who would have thunk that we'd be having those types of discussions at that level around some issues that carry a stigma. And a lot of times they're invisible to people, and a lot of times society has a hard time understanding. So I felt very grateful to be invited to that, to sit around that table and be a part of those discussions. And I think that one thing I did learn is that as Canadians we're quite a bit farther ahead than a lot of other countries in the prevention aspect of these issues. So congratulations to all of you guys for keeping the work moving and keep doing the good stuff out there and the tough work. So what I want to do is I wrote a book. It's called Why I Didn't Say Anything, and I just want to read a couple excerpts out of the book for a couple of reasons. One, to prove to you that ex hockey players can read, and we did pay attention to school, and kind of just get me into the game here too, and get focused on what we want to talk about. But I think the title of the book is called Why I Didn't Say Anything, and I think that's the biggest question that's asked around the issues of child abuse and mental health and bullying and etc. I think when two people pick up the newspaper and they're sitting having a coffee and they read an article in the newspaper, they're like, oh geez, why didn't they just say something? And I think it's the biggest question that caregivers or loved ones ask their siblings if they find out something's going on. Well, why couldn't you just tell me, sweetie? And I think it's the biggest question that the victims of these types of crimes ask themselves, why I couldn't say anything. So the goal is what I want to try to do is answer this question the best I can, because I think that, it's not the physical acts of these crimes that is the damage, it's the long-lasting mental effects. And there's now hard data to prove that, a lot of the mental health issues, 85% of mental health issues come from early childhood trauma. So to me, I think if we're talking about mental health, we're talking about bullying and so forth. I mean, sitting around that round table yesterday, it's like, if we want to erase the stigma of mental health, we better understand what mental health really is. But right now we want to throw everything under mental health or everything under bullying. And it's easy that way, instead of really understanding. So I think for us, it's what we need to really understand and give the people the tools to recognize and understand what these issues actually are. So I just set the table. I grew up in a little town, 150 people in the border of Manitoba, Saskatchewan. I grew up on a dairy farm out there. Knew how to work, didn't know how to vacation. Still kind of that way today. But we used to take Big Mac wrappers to school for show and tell. That was a treat, trust me. So when I met Graham, it was back in 1984, and I was 12 years old. And I just want to read a quick excerpt here out of the book. So in April of 1984, Graham invited me down to Winnipeg for a week to watch the Lions tournament, the biggest minor league tournament in Manitoba. He also arranged for me to play in a few of the games. He told my parents that I could stay with him in his Winnipeg apartment. Mom and Dad couldn't put me on the bus fast enough. And you got to remember that Graham was a teacher, and that's how he got access to a lot of kids. We always hear hockey coach, but Graham was a teacher. Graham met me at the station and took me straight to the arena. While we're watching the tournament, he asked me questions about my life that nobody had ever asked me. He asked me how I got along with my father, how I liked playing on my team, how I felt about school. I opened up to him immediately, especially when he asked me about my relationship with my dad. And I wasn't used to being asked about my feelings and opinions about things, and I sure wasn't used to being listened to with so much interest and attention. I told Graham that my father was never happy with anything I did, and he seemed to really listen to what I was saying, and he seemed to care. We went out to dinner that night, and then went back to his apartment, and I was a little startled when we first walked in. The walls were covered in photographs and newspaper clippings of the players he coached over the years. I recognized some of them had gone on to play in the NHL. And after listening to him talk about hockey all day and seeing the way he was treated by the men and players around the rink, I knew he was an important man, and the pictures on the wall just drove that point home even more. I was thrilled to be with him. I didn't want to screw things up, and because he'd been so open and caring with me, I wanted him to like and respect me. And I think, that's part of the grooming process. Forever we say, we think that the perpetrators in society around sexual assaults and so forth are going to jump out from behind a tree and they're lurking around the corner, and the reality is they're not. They're not. They're integrated right into families and trusted members of our communities, and I think that that's one of the biggest myths out there is that don't send your kids to the park because they're going to get attacked. That's probably not the best way to be thinking about these things. And I think that when I see that and I look at Graham James and the damage that he had, I have to look at how many more people he manipulated than just Sheldon Kennedy. He manipulated my mom, he manipulated the hockey system, he manipulated the media to get what he wanted. And and I know when in Swift Current, who was going to believe me, right? When I disclosed my story when I was 27 years old and playing in the NHL, people still didn't believe me. There were still articles in the paper still blaming me for bringing down the Holy Grail. And the reality was that it wasn't until Graham James pleaded guilty to myself and 2 other people, and then again to 2 more people, and I think we're going to see more, that people started to believe that this was actually going on. But I see the damage that was left and the people that were around the issue, that were manipulated and sucked into the vortex of Graham James, and they're good people. They didn't have the tools to know what to do when their gut's telling them that something is wrong. So I just want to talk a little bit about the way I felt on the bus coming back from Winnipeg after the first incidents has happened. And I think one of the things too is that they say, kids don't push back, and I pushed back and kicked and fought Graham away, but it's tough to do that when he pulls a gun out and threatens you and you're 12, and you can only push so much. So I think that a lot of times people have a hard time to understand these things, and they think that kids don't push and try to get away from this stuff, but the reality is they do. When I got back from Winnipeg, I was a different person. I'd gone to Winnipeg as a goofy, slightly mixed up kid dreaming about the future, and came back as a zombie. I couldn't find words to describe what had happened to me. I also had no idea how my family would react if I told them what had happened. Nothing in my experience could have prepared me to understand the abuse of the terrible emotions it left in its wake. Never had sex with a girl, and now I'd be in bed with a grown man more times than I wanted to remember. I felt set apart from everything, trapped in a world where my only companion that was slowly crushing me. It's hard to say what my parents would have done if I told them. I know they would have protected me the best they could. They certainly wouldn't have let Graham near me again, and knowing Dad's bad temper, he would have probably done something terrible to Graham. But it was partially my fear of my father that made it so hard for me to tell anybody. I was afraid that Dad would be ashamed of me. I was afraid of looking weak in his eyes. I was afraid that he would somehow blame me for bringing the shame on myself and my family by not being strong enough to resist. And I think that that's the fear that kids have. The fear of shame and guilt and letting your parents down. I never even heard of the words before in my life. And I think that when we look at the issues and we look at, it was interesting sitting around that round table yesterday. We looked at family physicians, nurses, dentists association, psychiatrists association, psychologists associations, and so forth. Well, become a family physician, you don't have to take any training on child abuse. To become a nurse, you don't have to take any training on child abuse. To become a teacher, you don't have to take any training on child abuse. And that's just the reality. And so we talked around, it's not just, it's not just about teachers, it's about, our professionals that work with our youth. We need to give them the tools to be better to recognize it and understand. And I think before the mindset was there was a really lack of understanding of the damage that these crimes have. And we used to be, just whatever, pull yourself up with the bootstraps and let's get going here. And that was the mindset. And the reality is that's not the case. As I talked earlier, there's hard evidence of the brain changes with early childhood trauma. And we wonder where mental health comes from. We wonder where addiction comes from. We wonder where, kids going off the rails are coming from. Our prisons are filled with kids that have been abused. That's who fills our prisons. We wonder how they got there. Oh, it just happened. Well, it never just happened. We can paint that picture, but we need to keep looking back downstream. And I think that, from the time we've been trying to raise these issues and raise awareness for 17 years. And what we've done is try to create confidence around these issues. If I look at the town of Swift Current, and I look at Penn State, and we look at incidences in these towns where pedophiles have operated, and we look at all the people that had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. Right? Because once the story breaks, everybody, I knew. Well, our goal is to give people the confidence to act on their gut and to be able to ask questions. And that's what our goal is. And that's what we have to do, because that's our responsibility, legally and morally. And I think that, what we've done over the years is try to educate people to give them confidence to do that. Are the people in Swift Current bad people that I knew, that were friends, that, in that town? I feel sorry for them, because I see the damage that Graham James has on that town. And I lived with the guidance counselor at the school, and the president of the Saskatchewan Law Society. That's where I lived, and so did another kid that was abused by Graham James. Right? So to me, I look and I see the shame and the guilt that's left with them. And I see the shame and the guilt that's left in that town, because they didn't have the tools to know what to do. Even though they knew something was wrong, they didn't know how to handle it. So our goal is to give people the tools. I mean, if we walk up and down the streets in Red Deer, Calgary, Toronto, doesn't matter. We ask adults, give me the definition of child abuse. Give me the definition of abuse, bullying, and harassment, your legal and moral responsibilities around that. What do you think the odds are that we get the right answer? Probably not very good. But yet, when it comes down to it, we're all expected to do the right thing. Right? We're all expected to do the right thing. And so to me, we need to be able to give people the tools so they can do the right thing. I want to talk a little bit about the Child Advocacy Center. We have a partnership. What we felt that we needed to do was create a consistent approach, one-stop shop for child abuse. Before, when we had to deal with the investigations of child abuse to happen in the industrial area, it was almost like the Get Smart, Maxwell Smart doors. You had to go through 18 doors, finally to a back room, and that's where you did your interview, and that's the way these issues were handled. And I think today what we've done is we've got partnerships with the Alberta Health, Alberta Child and Family Services, Human Services, RCMP, Crown Prosecutor, both rural and in the city. And now we've just brought a connection in with mental health, doctors, physicians. We've got over 100 professionals that work in the Child Advocacy Center. We've got the whole Calgary Police Child Abuse Unit. We've got 15 psychologists, and mental health workers. We have 30 child and family services providers. We've got the Crown prosecutors, and so the goal is that it's a one-stop shop for these issues, and we take them seriously. Because more and more and more, what we're finding, if we don't take care of them early and turn kids' lives around early, we're getting them again. They're coming in our justice system. So what we do is we do every child abuse investigation in southern Alberta. And Every sexual abuse case that comes through, we're doing it. And we do over 100 a month. So, and that's the most severe, on the severe spectrum of child abuse. That's torture cases, and those are sexual assaults. And those are the only ones we're getting. So, and that's roughly 15% of the load coming from Child and Family Services. So we're taking the bad, if you may, cases out of the community and dealing with them at the Child Advocacy Center. And we're at capacity. And, you know, I think that when we look at, you know, what we've been able to do there, it's, our mindset is we have 100 identified patients, children and family that come through those doors every month. We've got an opportunity to turn kids' lives around because we have a lot better chance of turning kids' lives around early than we do turning people's lives around after they've lived the life of trying to hide the shame and the guilt, drugs, the alcohol, etc. And when a child comes through those doors with their family, we're not just dealing with child abuse, we're dealing with addiction, we're dealing with domestic violence, we're dealing with mental health, we're dealing with all of the above. It's not just child abuse. We're dealing with all of the above. So our whole mindset there was we needed to break down the silos. I mean, you know, before we used to work and it used to be, oh, you have to go over here to do this interview with the Crown Prosecutor, and then you got to run over here and do this for health, and then you got to go get your exam over here. And so I think that what I'm getting at is that I think that we're really making some significant progress on these issues. And I think what I talk about is the understanding of the damage that these crimes have on our youth and on our communities, and the cost. If we look at the cost across this country, I mean, it's hundreds of billions of dollars that we spend on victims of crime. My mindset is, you know, can we not reach them early? And if we look at, you know, we look at the way the End Homelessness campaign goes in Calgary, you know, the end homelessness is like, well, 70% of our people end up on the street. Our mindset is, can we not reach them early? Can we not focus on reaching kids early? So our goal is that we all need to be pulling on the rope. We just got a secondment to work right at the Child Advocacy Center from the Alberta Education. And that person is going to work right inside the Child Advocacy Center, which is located on the University of Calgary across from Sick Kids Hospital. They're going to work right in there with all our partner organizations to help put together for the rewriting the curriculum coming up and understanding these issues. How do we better give our teachers the tools to recognize and understand and not be psychiatrists and psychologists. We need to give people the confidence to listen, act, and care. That's it. Let the professionals that work in the field do the work. It's not our decision, and I think that you know, that's the goal of what we're really trying to do is to create a confidence for people to take action on all these issues. And you know, I think that when we see kids coming through, 85% of the cases that we handled this year, which are over 1,200 cases, 85% of those cases happen within the family or a trusted member of the family. So you can imagine how delicate they are and why we need the wraparound service. You know, and I think one of the other things is that, you know, we think that as soon as we get somebody to disclose, oh, they're all better. They're all better now as soon as they tell their story. It's okay, sweetie, you know, and then they wonder why they're still going off the rails. It takes a long time once a child discloses to get them back on the track. And who sees these kids? Well, our teachers. Who sees these kids in our schools? Well, it's our teachers, and it's the people that are running our school system. So the whole point is that we need everybody pulling on the rope together. We need police pulling on the rope and supporting health workers. We need health workers pulling on the rope supporting child and family. We need child and family pulling on the rope supporting teachers. And everybody has to be on the same page. And one thing that I did realize is that when you look at apprehension, just that word apprehension, well, you know, now every case that comes in our doors, we have doctors, police officers, the Crown prosecutors, all of those partner agencies sitting around discussing what's the best plan to handle this case. But police's word apprehension was different than child and family's word apprehension, which was different than health's apprehension. So when you said, yeah, we're going to go apprehend, everybody had a different perception of what apprehend was. So it creates a lot of gaps in the way that we deal with these children. So a lot of this stuff is about being on the same page and being consistent in our approach and being consistent in our language. And it's been an interesting journey, let me tell you. But it is a one-stop shop for child abuse. And why is it any different than a child going into the children's hospital dealing with a broken leg or a broken arm? Kids that have been abused severely need to have the same treatment. So that's where we've been with our Child Advocacy Center, and it's going to be a model that will go across this country, no question. I think what we want to talk about a little bit is just what we've done. I think over the years is we've learned that society wants the tools to recognize and understand, just wants a basic education about what these issues are and how can they be better, because our mindset is that 99% of society wants to do the right thing. But I think that the reality is that a lot of people don't know where to even start with this type of issue. So we started in sport. We started when we played it across the country. We donated money to the Red Cross, who then again wrote the Speak Out program for Hockey Canada. And it really came from Bob Nicholson from Hockey Canada. He said, you know what, we can't possibly reach the masses with this type of training. So, and I think when we first started doing this type of education, what it was everybody get their back up against the walls and we're going to find you. And that was, like finding a needle in a haystack. So it's really changed over time and evolved into empowering the bystander. It's really about empowering the bystander. It's about giving people the tools to recognize and understand and ask questions. I mean, that's really what it is. So these are adults across our country, multiple sports, and so forth. And a lot of these are teachers. And that's how we came up with the Respect in School program, is that our teachers came up to us and said, well, we don't have this in our schools. We don't have any of this stuff in our schools. So we set out and created the Respect in School program, which is very similar to sport program, but the issues aren't unique. The hockey coaches take the exact same program that gymnastics coaches take, because the issues are the same when it's adult and child. And if we look at our school bus drivers across this province, across this country, what training have they ever had to give them the tools? They're stuck with, the issues that happen back and forth on the bus. And I grew up on the bus, busing in. So I think it's we need to give them the tools to recognize and understand how to handle these issues. So the school program is built for any adult that is part of our school system, to give them the tools to recognize and understand. And if you're a hockey coach and a school teacher in a small community, you don't have to take the program twice. We just transfer your information. Again, it's about creating consistency among these issues. And I think part of the conversation yesterday at the World Health Organization in our country, we need focus. Wherever we're pushing the ball up the hill, trying to get people to pay attention. Now the ball's going down the other side of the hill, and we need to keep that thing from breaking apart. Everybody wants to talk about bullying. When we started doing this stuff, bullying wasn't even a word, right? Sexting is a new word that just came in. Mental health, that's really hit the forefront now, and everybody wants to jump on that bandwagon. And I think that the reality is we need to keep this stuff simple, and we need to keep it focused. Because I think when you empower the bystander, it's really about breaking down stigma. And I think that what our role is that we've had to take $26 words and really simplify them so that people understand them. When I first started looking at the literature around these issues 17 years ago, I couldn't even understand the stuff that was put down. And so for me, it's about being consistent. It's about giving people the tools and be positive. forever we've sit in doom and gloom with this stuff, right? We need to talk about there's a way out, right? It's about, yes, something happened, okay. It's about acceptance, okay. But you know what, we're gonna deal with it, we're gonna get you out of that. And it's gonna be all of us pulling on the rope together. And a big piece of that is our teachers, whether we like it or not. And it's not about teachers being the abusers the way we see it. It's about teachers being in a position where they may be the only trusted adult in these kids' lives. Because we know that 85% of the cases come from home. So the teachers in our schools could be the only safe place for these kids. And we need to make sure that we give them the tools to recognize it, to understand it, and be part of the process of turning kids' lives around. Now I look at myself, and I look at where I went, and I had the system, the NHL system around me. And everybody wanted, it was almost like a competition of who could fix Sheldon. And, you know, I mean, I was in 2 psych wards, actually 3. Peter Lougheed, Foothills, and Rockville, Maryland. 8 treatment centers. And nobody ever asked me the question if I was sexually abused. And I think that we need to ask those questions, because I think that it happens a lot. And this isn't, you know, that story, you know, is about sexual abuse, but I look at abuse and bullying and stuff. It all has the same lasting effects: the shame, the guilt, etc. This is just respect in school. I mean, we've been rolling this stuff out across the provinces, and you know, this is kind of where we're at in New Brunswick. It's available there to all their support staff and their teachers. And I think that for us, it needs to be, when we implement this stuff in the organizations, it needs to be mandatory, because it's about creating standards. And it's about creating, you know, a lot of times what we would see is that, you know, Johnny or Julie didn't get an A on their test. That's bullying. No, it's not bullying. But I think there's so many different perceptions of bullying and abuse and everything out there. And again, it's like, oh, you know, you're bullying my kid. And I think that, you know, when we're unclear of things, there's such a gray area, we can't even have a conversation about it. Because the person can't really challenge them, because they don't really understand it either. So the goal is to be able to create a consistent language and a consistent approach and a consistent understanding of what these things actually are. And that's the goal, right from principal to the janitor to the school bus drivers. So in Alberta, there's an opportunity for the ministry to run a 4,000 person pilot in this province. And there's quite a few actually school divisions that have signed up. But I really just want to let Rick Mercer, he does our leader message for the program. And he'll give you a sample of kind of the approach that we've taken to discuss these issues.
Rick Mercer here to help you get off on the right foot as you jump into the Respect in School program. No matter what your role as an adult involved in the school system, you're a leader and someone students look up to and rely on. That carries with it an important responsibility to know how to handle tough issues like harassment, bullying, abuse, and discrimination. If our kids can't count on you, then who can they count on? What you're about to learn in the Respect in School program may be brand new for some and a refresher for others. Either way, it will put everyone on the same page, create a common understanding of some difficult issues, and give you confidence in your ability to act. It will also empower you not to be a silent bystander when you see any sort of inappropriate behavior taking place. There is a disconnect when the question is asked, are we doing a good job at preventing bullying, harassment, abuse, and discrimination? The adults, for the most part, believe they are doing a good job. The kids, and this is backed up by research, not so much. Respect in School will provide you with the information and tools that will help close the gap, so students see that you and other adult leaders around them really do care and are open, approachable, and ready to provide the necessary support when called upon. What makes some of this stuff even tougher is that these incidents often happen in the shadows, online, and away from the view of adults. Even if you don't see it firsthand, there are often signs that it is happening. And that's where you, as adult leaders, need to step up and step in. If you're ready to go, I encourage you to remove all distractions and give this program your full attention. Remember, you can leave the program at the end of any section and then pick up where you left off. And please take the time to complete any evaluations that you may be presented with along the way, like the one that will come up next. Your feedback is a critical component of the research being conducted on this program. Thank you for participating in the Respect in School training program.
So that's just a leader message, so before you get into the program. But I think what our goal is to create a platform for conversation to happen. And we just finished our first, they call it World Cafe, and we had with the Calgary Catholic School Division. So we had ministers from the government, we had deputy ministers, we had 60 students, grade 11 students. We had lots of CEOs, corporate Calgary, come together and discuss these issues in a World Cafe format and in Calgary. And there was 200 people in there as a pilot. And we had worked with the kids for a few months and had them through the center. They got to speak with the police officers, etc. And discussions were unbelievable. And there was 4 people per pod, so there was a student, a corporate, and frontline worker, government worker in the discussions. And they were great, and it's all about solution-focused discussions. And our kids are more educated on these issues than us as adults, because you know what, where else, if we didn't go out and seek that type of education, where else would we have got it? Because it just wasn't around when we were young. Even me wasn't there. So, you know, I work in the field, I understand it, but the reality is my mom, my brother, you know, they've never understood this stuff. But the reality is that most of us have been affected directly or indirectly by some of this. And so I think that, you know, from that conversation, Vicki Reed from Synovus was there, and she just was blown away. She's like, you know what, this is our responsibility, because as corporate in the community, this is our responsibility to help carry this message and to educate our employees who are parents. Because if we look at these issues, how do people operate? They operate under ignorance and indifference. That's how they get away with this stuff. Our ignorance and indifference in society. And you know, so the more that we can create a confidence, the more that we can create an opportunity for people to have a conversation, the better we're going to be. And I think that if we look at, you know, any of the research around child abuse, mental health, and any of this stuff, it's all about prevention. It's all about prevention. It's all about you know, being able to make sure that we give people the tools. And how do we best do that? And to me, you know, coming from the farm and probably not being the best student, and I need to keep it simple, right? I got to keep it simple. And you know what? The reality is when I really look at these issues, it is simple. It's not that difficult when we're working together. And I think that that's the goal. You know, it's, I'll give you an example. I mean, the Calgary Police, just the sexual assault investigations went up 40% this year in Calgary since the opening of the Child Advocacy Center. Why is that? It's families aren't giving up on the system. That's why that is. We were losing that many in the system. And to me, you know, we have the opportunity to make a difference in these kids' lives. Keep them in school. And a lot of times we're losing them. You imagine where kids go when they don't have the system wrapped around them? I know where I went when I did have a system wrapped around me. So you can imagine where they go when they don't. It's not good. And I think more than ever today, we need to get back to the old saying, it takes a community, it takes a village to raise a child. That I think we need to get back to. And so they talked about that at the round table yesterday. You know, we think that we always have to come to the Western world to learn. Well, there's a lot of, you know, if we look at, you know, some of the smaller communities and so forth and how they wrap around and they help one another, I mean, in some of these other countries, I mean, it's critical. Right? And I think we need to understand that. But I think with these issues, we've created a paranoia. I'm not getting involved. Throw the blinders on. Right? I didn't see that. Right? Because of fear that we've created around these issues of getting involved and doing the right thing as a citizen. I think we need to get the blinders off. So these are just some school highlights. But I think I was going to open it up if anybody had any questions for a few minutes. No math questions. But I'd be happy to try and answer questions as best I can, and you know, feel free to ask. If anybody has one, just shout it out.
So one of the things I heard you say was, that nobody had ever asked you if you'd been sexually abused, or I just find though that with kids, it's the norm for them, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, it's what's normal for them, so they wouldn't know what that actually was, they just know that they hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody was to ask the child, are you being sexually abused, I think that, again, where you said that it needs to be simple, we need to find words that are simple enough to talk to kids about.
Yeah, and I think that for me, I think what I was referring to there, maybe I wasn't very clear, but when I was actually in the treatment centers or in the psych wards, I was never asked those questions. But I think you're absolutely right. In discussing with kids, we need to be able to, you know, I think the majority of the time, we're going to know when something's right or wrong. But what we're trying to do is let the professionals handle that. I think that when we look at sporting organizations and try to handle all this stuff in-house, it's, you know, I wonder how qualified we are to do that when it comes right down to it. Our goal is to make sure that we can act, give people the tools to act. Okay, we need to go here. This is where we need to call, right? And let them make that decision. And I think that, you know, I know for us, working with the Calgary Catholic and some of the rural organizations, we get them to the center, let them talk to all the professionals, and so that we have a clear path on where we need to be and where we need to send these kids and how we need to handle these cases. And that's the critical piece, right? I think that for me, you know, when somebody would disclose something to me, I think, oh, I got to fix them. I got to fix them. And the reality is, you know what, the best thing that I can do is take their hand and guide them to where they need to go. And let the people that know what they're doing handle it. And I think that that's, to me, when we talk about empowering the bystander, that's, to me, what I believe is empowering the bystander. Listen, care, and act. Nothing more than that. And because I know that the people that you know, work with our at the Child Advocacy Center, they're good. And it's not about charging everybody. It's about how do we best handle the kids. And what we're seeing more and more and more and more, kids sexually abusing kids, is the access to pornography. Big time. So what do? Throw the kids in jail? No. So you got to find ways to work with them and you know, and these kids, and you got to get them back into schools at some point. How do we best do that? So what we find is that the best way to deal with these issues is together. We need to be supporting one another. And so I think that you're absolutely right. Language is critical. And I think what I was getting at before was that, you know, people back then would never have asked those questions, right? And I think it's changed a lot today, but thanks for that.
Hi, thanks very much for sharing your story first off. But more importantly, thanks for sharing your work with us. It's very critical work. I'm wondering, and I may have missed it, you may have shared it with us, but what is the most current estimate of children who, and I know that we don't see it all, but of children who've been abused? Do you have those figures?
Well, I think it's a tough one to measure, and it's some outdated data on numbers, perceived numbers, but I can tell you that for, I can talk about I should have brought that with me, but I can talk about the numbers that we see and all the data that we have coming out of the in Calgary. And roughly we deal with all the cases that come into Child and Family Services. On a month, we deal with the most severe cases, which is 15% of the cases that come into that system. And roughly that's 100 cases a month is the 15% that we're dealing with. It's 79% females, 30% males that are coming in. And I know that I think it's 32% of the kids that have come in come from, there's background in mental health issues within the family, and 62% of the kids that are coming in a violent home where drugs and alcohol are present. So it's a
Oh, that was kind of like a math question, wasn't it?
I almost had to take my shoes off to count the toes. But I think that overall, it is a major problem. It's a major problem, and we're seeing more and more kids coming forward because they're feeling safe enough to do so. So I think it's a moving target. But one thing that I do know is that, and just with the ability at the center, because we have kids will keep coming back for therapy as long as it's needed. We're able to turn kids' lives around early, and which is important.
Wendy Miller, Sturgeon School Division. Sheldon, I know that the numbers of children, the ages of the children are across the spectrum, but is there a general area where there is more than any other area of school-age children that you're dealing with?
Well, we don't. Yeah, we. What is it? I think it's 50% of 50 or 80% of the cases of kids that are abused are 12 and under. That's 50. 50% of the kids are 12 and under. 80% of those kids disclose to a peer. So that's interesting because it's, for us, it's like we need to give the kids the tools to know what to do if if a child discloses to them. Less than 1% of kids that disclose are false allegations. So we think, oh, the kid's making it up. No, they're not making it up. And I can tell you that, and it's not an area that's to scare people, but we have a baby unit that we deal with kids. Well, we actually deal with high-risk pregnant women right up to 6 months. So we have that. We've just had to expand the amount of people that work in that area, and that is really about. That's really about making sure that we keep mom safe and baby safe, and that's a police officer, a nurse, and so forth. So I think the spectrum goes from, we deal with kids from 18 to 0 years old, and it's, that one's a tough one. The baby unit's a tough one to understand for people, but it does happen, and a lot. I think we dealt with 100 cases in the last 3 months. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. One more question. Yes,
Sheldon, I'm just wondering, as serious as this is, and yet I'm not too shocked that the government's across this province, we're talking about a pilot project. Why not just do it? Why are we waiting for just a pilot project?
Well, I think that, I think we're dealing with difficult issues, and I think it's about social change, and I think that, sometimes when we tried to look at these issues before, I think there's been an effort, And I think that we've asked our people to take some pretty cumbersome things. And I know with sport, it used to be 3 feet of paper and tell them to implement this, and a lot of times they couldn't even get to it because it was sitting on the side of the desk. So, I think that, the mandatory thing, it's, we can't make people do stuff. But yet I think that, we get there. I think pilots seem to be the way to go. But if we look at sport, sport's a lot farther ahead than we are in schools when we look at giving our people the tools. And but yet I think that we all need to be on the same page and consistent. And, that's a question maybe to ask them. But I think for us, what I've learned, and I used to be very impatient, we need to push, but we also need to understand that we need to work within the boundaries of what's going on. And I think if we look at the number of organizations that are involved, it's about collecting data and collecting support. But we're pretty. I think we're going to get there. I think the reality is, society's want for this type of education is a lot farther ahead than what government and people think it is, right? I mean, the numbers that showed you that, those are on the sport, of the 250,000 people, those are them taking it in a mandatory position, saying, this was good, right? This helped me. And it's not about making people feel bad and saying, geez, you're a bad person if you did that. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, probably could be a little better, right? My buddies back home, farming, right? The hockey coaches or whatever it is, it's like, yeah, it was good. There's a few things I might be able to be better at, but it was good. And I think that's what we need to do. So, anyway, thank you very much.
I want to say thank you to Sheldon and Wayne for joining us today. And I did take the Respect in Sport program, and it's I think it's 2 years ago now. Hockey Alberta made it mandatory. The parent program. And it's amazing how you can walk into some arenas today and still see the people who perhaps have not taken the Respect in Sport program. So I look forward to the day when this program is available. Respect is available across our country, and helping us to capture those kids that need our assistance. So thank you, and accept this donation on our behalf to the Child Advocacy Center.
Oh, thank you very much.